In today's video, I decided to draw two of my original characters together for the very first time. I believe the past videos I have posted have mostly been fan arts, and that's what I usually post on Instagram and Twitter. So, I wanted to create something more original, because I like doing fan arts, but I've done them a lot. And I was really excited to draw these characters together because they are actually supposed to be husband and wife, and I haven't drawn them together since their very creation, and that's a little sad. I'm going to go ahead and give a brief summary of these two characters. I'm not going to go into too much detail, because again, I want to keep it brief. Let's get into it. Legend is an elf, Olga is a fairy. You could probably tell by the ears and the wings. Legend is the head of the military and works very closely with the queen. Olga is the queen's handmaid. I suppose you have already figured out how they met. Legend is definitely not a stoic character, but he is very expressionless because he has a classic case of RBF. He looks like he's angry all the time, which honestly, also true. Olga was originally going to be very similar to Legend, which is to say, angry all the time and scary. However, I scrapped this idea because they wouldn't be able to grow, lift each other up, teach each other new things, and all that fun jazz. Instead, Olga is very kind and has great listening ears and eyes that don't pass any judgment. How poetic of me. This is the complete opposite of her original concept, but I think she's just what Legend needed. When it comes to the designs of these characters, I'd like to say that they are thought out, but definitely were the first outfits that I slapped on. Today's video is not meant to redesign these characters, just to draw them together, so I'm not going to be changing their outfits too much or anything. The most I do is change up the colors so that they fit a color scheme. But yeah, really nothing too major. Maybe that's an idea for a future video. I don't know. We'll see. Legend has a bulletproof vest for whatever reason. I'm still debating on whether or not guns exist in this world, but that's really his only coverage. He hasn't died yet, so I suppose he's good, doesn't need anything else. His cape and shoes are meant to tie in with this whole moon and stars theme that I had planned out for the fairies specifically. And the funniest part is that Olga, being the fairy, doesn't have any moon or stars on her dress. It's just a simple dress with a gradient. Right now you are seeing me struggle with the line art. To be perfectly honest, it has been over a month since I last used Speedpaint. Last week's footage was actually recorded in December, so I was relearning my process, I suppose. At first I wanted to use the G pen because I thought it would make for a smoother line art, which it would if I had changed my pen pressure sensitivity. I couldn't keep any of the line width the same throughout, and therefore was unable to get the line variation I had in mind. I need more practice. So I went back to using the same line art brush I did in the last video, the Speedpaint. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is a custom brush that I had downloaded from the asset library when I was still getting used to Speedpaint. Legend's face gave me a really hard time. I had forgotten how his nose curves downwards, and I couldn't make him smile. Like I said, he is very expressionless, and now I think I'm starting to learn why I made this decision. I have only ever drawn him not smiling. Feeling a little defeated, I decided that it would be best if I moved on to Olga. I was so glad when I did this because I was having a much easier time constructing her face, and I didn't need to draw much of her neck, which were some of the main points of struggle with Legend. I know I had mentioned that I wanted smoother line art, and here you can see that it's actually quite sketchy. Not the smoothest in the world, but at this point it didn't bother me because Olga was turning out so well. I really like how squishy she looks. I know that's a really weird thing to say, but I don't know how else to say it or describe it. I really like the round shapes in her design. It makes her look huggable. Well, I suppose I did know how to say it. I'm now giving Legend another go. I pulled up a reference I had of him on my phone. It showed his nose shape better. You can also see that I decided he didn't need to smile. I will change this later on so that Legend and Olica look like they like each other. But at this point, I didn't want to deal with it. I was done. I was done with him. I had a bit of a tricky time with Legend's pants. I remember since his original design, I had wanted them loose so that he could move around a lot, move around more freely. I didn't look up a reference for the original, so I decided to do myself a favor with this piece and scroll through Pinterest. Thankfully, I found what I was looking for, and now I think the pant wrinkles turned out really well. Right now I'm touching up the line art. I fixed facial features and erased bits that are a little too sketchy for my liking. Now I'm starting to go in with the color. I'm creating separate base layers for both Legend and Olica. For Legend, I just used the bucket tool set to reference all layers. This ended up being a bit of a pain because while I was coloring, I had to go and fix spots around the line art that weren't colored in, since the bucket tool was referencing the line art layer. For Olica, I outlined her with color and used the bucket tool set to refer only to the layer I was coloring on. I didn't have any issues with her regarding coloring around the line art. I'm learning from my mistakes here. And then I added a gradient background because I didn't want it to be plain white, but I also didn't want to put much effort into making an actual background. I made the values the opposite of Legend's, which is to say the background goes from light down to dark, and Legend's cape goes from dark down to light. After I create these base layers, I sort them into two folders. Legend has one, and Olica has one. Once in these folders, I start coloring. I started to color Legend first. His skin is blue, and then I made his hair and all his clothes different values of the same hue of purple. I was really trying to limit my color palette because I wanted everything to look cohesive without applying an overlay layer. I think he turned out pretty well. Olica gave me a bit of trouble. I gave her the same skin tone as Legend, and then I had to adjust the hue a tiny bit to get the right hair color. Like I said before, I wanted to limit my color palette. I didn't want to use a lot of hues because my color theory knowledge is not the most perfect one out there. Her dress gave me a really hard time, specifically because of the gradient she has applied to it. At first, I tried to lighten the color of her dress so that it wouldn't look out of place, because it would be like she was meant to contrast Legend in the first place. However, none of the lighter colors I could come up with looked right on her, so I settled on giving her the same dark dress as the original. When it came to the gradient, the warm colors looked a bit out of place to me. They looked like they were the focus, which is not what I had intended. I don't want the viewer to be looking at Alika's dress. I want them to be looking at how happy Alika and Legend are together. So I color picked off of Legend and used an airbrush in certain places of Alika's dress to sort of cool it down, I guess, which I think worked out. I forgot to record the bit where I shaded Legend, but thankfully I remembered it when it came to Alika, so you can see me do the same process on her. I first apply a gradient set to multiply. I think I'm using the same gradient I used for Legend's cape. Once the gradient is set in place, then I just erase parts of the gradient where I think there would be less shadow. It's pretty simple. I've used it only once before. The characters still look a bit two-dimensional, so I create another layer set to multiply and add shadow to the places I think would be darker. This is actually a step that I repeated multiple times because I had a hard time, 1, putting the shadows in the correct place, and 2, finding the right color. The first time I started applying the shadows, I was using a dark purple, but because of how dark it was, it made everything look muddy to me. It didn't look like this was how the shadows should look on the skin. So next I went in with the skin color set to multiply, and I tried again on Alika. I felt better about this, but on her dress it looks so muddy, it doesn't even look like shadow to me. So I like the shading that I did with the blue. So what I did for both Alika and Legend is I copied that layer, set it to alpha lock, and then recolored it with a light purple, and I think this turned out pretty well. I think I found the right colors, and so I'm pretty happy with the end result, and I hope you guys like it too.